Hello and welcome to pmclounge.com. I'm very happy today because I have a special guest. His name is Mani, a recent PMP graduate or PMP certified professional. He cleared his PMP on 13th of March, been about a month. Mani, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Shoaib. Thanks for the interview. Appreciate that.
Great. So, thank you for taking the time out. Let's start off with your introduction of sorts. Tell us about your experience and your career so far.
Sure. I work in a software services industry. It's been about close to 17 years now. And I work as a director program delivery for a software service industry company based out of North America. I'm currently based out of Pennsylvania, United States. And I take care of Oracle ERP testing, and I head that center of excellence practice for my company.
Mhm.
And before this particular profile, I also worked as business analyst, project manager, delivery manager, ERP consultant, etc. So I always wanted to do PMP for a while, though I have done a lot of Scrum Master and Product Owner and a lot of technical certifications. This was in my bucket list. I wanted to do in 2020, but I couldn't find time. So 2021, I set up a target to come what may, I should finish by March.
Mhm.
So, I signed up, prepared, and cleared it. So, pretty happy over it.
Great, great. So yeah, I mean, based on your experience, it looks like PMP was a long time coming.
Yeah, that's
Great.
true.
So you mentioned that you were trying to clear the PMP last year. Did you have any exposure to the previous exam? Did you prepare for it by any chance?
No, actually, the only thing that I did in 2020 was buying a book, and that's
Mm,
it. I couldn't find time to study because of the corporate work and the
mm,
commitment that I have. Last year was pretty, and though you had all these COVID restrictions, that
mm.
only increased your work because you're working from home. There is no 8 hour work. It is typically more than 15, 16 hours. So I didn't find time at all. So then I thought, okay, I should not give any more excuses. 2021, I should do it, and that's how I started in end of January. The first thing I did is I applied for the certification, the exam in PMP. I just submitted the application, and
Mhm.
then the moment it got approved, I booked the date.
Okay.
I didn't even pick up a plan and things. I booked the date so that I work backwards. So I know a
Mhm.
date and how many days I have between, and then I work backwards, and that's how I did it.
That's one way to start studying and make yourself accountable to clear the exam. One thing
Absolutely.
I really like that you mentioned about the COVID restrictions and all is for some people working in certain industries. Let's say if you are working in an IT industry that has software or products for banking industry or anything related to finance,
Mhm.
those guys actually got more work because of COVID and not less
Yeah.
of it. But yeah, I mean, if your company had products for the airline industry and the hospitality world, then yeah, of course, the work reduced. And so it was both ways. Some people tend to think that because of COVID, all companies I mean, seen a dip in their work, but that was not the case. I really
Yeah,
like that
that's one
you
of the
brought that.
things in the service industry, right? Because you're in a software services industry, so we serve client across, starting from retail, oil and gas, manufacturing, automotive, banking, financial. So
Mhm.
it's a wide variety of services that you do, and typically when you take care of a business unit as well, sometimes
Yeah.
the work only expands exponentially during COVID. So I actually planned for sure because of the exam that's going to change in 2021. I was kind of pushing myself back of my head, hey, should I really do it in 2020? But then I didn't even get a chance to open the book. Then I thought, hey, I should not really rush it. It's okay, whatever it is, let me take in 2021. Let's see how
Mhm.
it is. And that's how I started in the end of January, actually.
Cool, cool, cool. So since you mentioned that you bought a book in 2020, what book was it?
So my study plan, the study plan was with three different books. I
Mm,
first book I bought was Scott Payne, the predictive based book. He didn't have any agile content there. I bought that book because I really like the process group wise approach.
mm,
I am a visual learner, so for me, instead of going by knowledge area, I like the way he explained the process group wise. So I just got
mm,
the book. I was all pumped to study last year, and I got the book. That's number one.
mm,
Number two, I got Andrew Ramdayal. That
Okay.
book is also really good, and
Mm.
with especially the new version that he released, he has got a section called Mindset, a PM Mindset that
Mm.
includes traditional PM as well as Agile and
Mm.
hybrid. So it
Okay.
contains all the three. I got that book, and I also got Udemy courses by
Okay.
Joseph Phillips,
Mm.
and these are the three things that I had purchased, and all these three material really helped.
Mm.
Other than that, I used to watch a lot of YouTube videos, and one of them is yours. And I really like the knowledge area wise explanation, crisp and short, exactly what you want to review. So I
Mm.
kind of started bookmarking those, and that also helped. When we talk about what exactly I did for studying, probably I can explain a bit more. But when you ask for the material, these are the three things that I did.
Great, great. And Scott Payne is, I mean, that book is one of my favorites too.
Yeah.
Really glad you mentioned it. Link to
It's very
those books
small.
in
If you look at
description.
it, 250 pages, and that's
Right,
it.
right.
We have a PMBOK of 500 plus, and then you have half the page of a book. I was like, I really got interested towards studying actually,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
the small book I used to carry it in my car as well. So whenever I find time to even go on a run or something, I
Mm.
just go for a run. I park my car in the park, and then I'll just have a quick glance through. That's also helped me.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah, true. I mean that is an interesting book. A lot of people don't know about it. Like I said, I'll link them in the description. I really like that book. That's one of my favorites when it comes to project management. But yeah, let's
right?
talk about the entire preparation journey. How was it? How many hours a day did you work? Did you work on PMP? That is.
Okay, so I started on January 24th to be precise, and I set up a target for March 15th, actually. So by March 15th, I should finish the exam. So what I did was I spent at least 2 hours a day minimum, and then weekends I spent 4 to 6 hours. That was my plan. The first 1 week I was not able to do it.
Mhm.
From February onwards, I thought, okay, even if I finish my work at 8 o'clock, before getting to bed, I have to study. So what I did was I set up some reminders with my Google Home. What it does is it gives me number of days left for my exam and number of hours left for my exam. So that kind of motivated me to make sure, hey, you have only limited time. Let's start focusing on it. So what I
Mhm.
did was I started with a process group wise. So how a typical project is going to work. You have done it a lot in terms of how you do it typically, not the PMBOK way of doing it. So you
Mhm.
have to unlearn those things and look at how PMBOK actually says. So starting from initiating, I started looking at the first two, develop project charter and stakeholders, right? So the first two, I started identifying stakeholders. The first two, I concentrated on. Week one, I made sure all the knowledge areas I'm thorough on these two in terms
Mhm.
of that particular process group, and then I switched to planning, executing, monitoring and control, and closing. So all the five process groups, all the 49 processes, I went by process group wise, and then
Mhm.
I finished one full read. After that, I started giving prepcast in knowledge area wise first.
Mhm.
So I made sure I kind of know at least 80% or above. And then I started giving 20 questions a day. And slowly I moved to 50 questions a day. And then I went up to 100 questions. So it took about 20 days for me to move to 100 questions, because for me, I cannot really sit for 4 hours for an exam. That is something that it always pushes me. Oh, how am I going to sit for 4 hours? So then I started practicing my mind to make sure I'm going to really concentrate that 4 hours. So that helped gradually increase from 20 to 50, 50 to
Mhm.
100. And then when I did knowledge area wise question, let's say when I was doing 20 questions, even if I get two incorrect, until unless I get 20 out of 20, I used to try what is it two I'm not getting. So I kind of did deep dive on why these two are not correct. So that prepcast really helped me. And then I used to, whenever I have doubt, I park that question, I go back to Udemy video, Joseph Phillips video, I go back to Scott Payne's book, I also go back to Andrew Ramdale's book. So I'll make sure I clear my doubts, I clarify what are the basics that I should be understanding much more deeper, and
Mhm.
then I went ahead with it. So this was happening from February 1st to end of February. From March 1st, I booked 13th as the exam, so I have only less than 2 weeks time. So I started giving mock. Every mock when I gave, it gave me a lot of confidence, because you always see 75 and above. I was like, wow, that's really good. It
Yeah.
kind of motivated me, and also I made sure why these 20% is still not there. And then
Mhm.
I did a complete retrospective. What that means is not only the incorrect answers, but the correct answers also. So that
Right.
made sure I reinforced my understanding perfectly. Like
Mm.
I might have assumed certain things and I thought that is correct. Luckily, that would have been correct. But per the definition, is it correct? So I go by all the explanations.
Mm.
So I did one mock, 1.5 days of retrospective. So I completed four mock, and then I was also part of another a study group, which also helped me. So they also suggested few mocks. So I cleared that as well. And then
Mm.
at one point, I was like, man, I don't think so. You're going to be 100% confident for the exam.
Mm.
So let's not think about anything. You're done with four marks. Let's go and give the exam. So that's how I just went ahead and did on 13th of March.
Mm.
One thing that really pumped me was the hybrid approach, because there is no right or wrong answer that is given in the book. It's
Mm.
all about how you tailor it. So that kind of gives you a little bit of deeper understanding. Okay, now you know this is how a predictive thing should work. This is how an adaptive thing should work. Now, if you mix both, what sort of tailoring approach is the best answer? So that kind of tricks you in when you read this question. So that I felt I became really strong in that area in the mock. So
Mm.
then with all the confidence, I was like, okay, let me go ahead and give it. And
Mm.
that's how I gave it. Maybe I'll explain you a bit more in terms of how the exam was and things like that. But
Mm.
this was my mindset before going for the exam. I was all ready. I was like, okay, let me go and do it.
Yeah, I think fantastic answer there. I think that is going to help a lot of people that are going to prepare for their PMP exam. A few things, actually, one thing that really, really stood out for me, based on the answer that you gave, was reviewing the answers, not just the questions that you got wrong, but also the answers that you got right. That is extremely important, because as Mani said, because that is how you are going to reinforce the concepts, reinforce the knowledge that you have, and ensure that you are thinking the way PMI wants you to think when it comes to PMP exam. Now, Mani, you talked about all the knowledge areas and process groups and everything, but we all know that exam changed starting 2021, and
Hmm.
it was 50% agile. So,
Hmm.
how was your agile side of preparation? Where did you study agile from?
So because I'm in software industry, I deal with a lot of clients. So I know Agile a little bit,
Mhm.
not to the
Mhm.
greater extent, but I know definitely for the PMP perspective. Yes, I knew it. I also had Scrum Master and Product Owner certification prior, so
Mhm.
that kind of helped me for sure that all those questions are readable and are understandable. But with PMI, it's not always easy. When you read those questions, what do you think is right? All the four answers will be right. So that is when you got
Mhm.
to put your mindset towards, hey, okay, if you're there, what would you choose?
Mhm.
What would be the first thing to choose? What would be
Mhm.
the best thing to choose? What is
Okay.
something that you should be avoiding? So all those sort of question nuances you picked
Mhm.
up, and
Mhm.
then that really helped in mock. So I know that agile, I will score 90 and above, 90% above, but for predictive and agile mixed, I don't know how that will work. So that is where I concentrated, pretty much. Preparation wise, because in Scott Pine book there is no agile content. Andrew Ramdale book, I would always recommend all the aspirants now go and buy that book. It's going to really, really help you. One section of that is like the mindset that I talked about. It actually gives you, as a PM, what you should be thinking.
Mhm.
It's really, really good. As a predictive PM, how you should be thinking, what you should be thinking. As an agile PM, what you should be doing, and also as a hybrid PM. So that
Okay.
really gives you a lot of empowerment, so to speak, to
Mhm.
answer those questions confidently.
Mhm.
And that's how I prepared. For me, because I know a little bit of agile knowledge prior. Because of my practical work experience, so I was able to read it faster, and then I was able to complete in a 30 to 35 days of preparation.
Mhm. That's cool. Yeah. So it's important to have previous knowledge as well when it comes to agile, because some people come from, let's say, construction industry or from
Mm.
operations background and not from IT, and they have no idea what agile is. Then of course you need to study agile, because PMP is now 50% agile. But when you have someone like Money, who's already certified Scrum Master, who's already has certified product owner kind of certifications, which deal with agile methodologies, it becomes easier. So yeah, glad to know that. Now let's talk about the exam itself,
Yeah.
the type of questions in the exam. So uh, there is this misconception that the new PMP does not have significant number of scenario based questions. Now, when I speak to some people, they say that's a misconception, like I
Yeah,
said. But when I
yeah.
speak to others, they also tend to think that, yeah, I mean, they didn't see significant number of scenario based questions. So as of now, it's sort of right there in between. Some people say they saw a lot of the scenario based questions, some people say they didn't see many. How was your experience?
So out of 180 questions, I can tell you not even one question was a straight shooter.
Oh.
So it's always situational based. I didn't
Hmm.
get a single question which actually talks about, hey, what is the output of this? What is the input of this?
Hmm.
What process group are you in? Or
Hmm.
what sort of knowledge area are you in? There is no straight shooters. It's
Hmm.
always situational. As a project manager, what would you do? What should have been done? What could have been done?
Hmm.
What would have been done? So there are a lot of English vocabulary nuance in the question
Hmm.
that you can easily miss. There is a
Hmm.
huge difference between what would you do or what could you have done,
Hmm.
right? Because when you read it, it actually you kind of read it fast, and then you then realize, oh, that actually gives you a different meaning altogether when you read it again.
Hmm.
So to me, all the 180 questions, 100% situational, and about 95%, I would say 90 to 95% hybrid. I
Hmm.
didn't get a single question which actually talks only predictive. There are questions where even they asked about CPI, SPI sort of a
Hmm.
thing, but that included velocity in there. That had
Hmm.
got velocity in there, and there is no calculation whatsoever required, no mathematical questions. The
Hmm.
one that had, you can actually calculate in your head. You don't need a calculator.
Hmm.
But I don't know how people say there are no situational questions. For me, all the 180 were proper scenario-based situational question,
Wow.
and in fact, there are questions with 5 lines,
Hmm.
5 line questions, and the answers were like two lines.
Hmm.
And I have got a match the following, to match from left to right. That
Hmm.
I had seven choices, so which means you need to spend at least 2 minutes.
Hmm.
One thing that I have to tell people who are watching this is the match the following in the real exam. um, in prepcast, you kind of match it, and then both the answers, like left and right, will be seen in the screen, okay?
Hmm.
Whereas in the real exam, you actually pull the left hand side option and put it on top of the right, which means it actually supersedes. So the
Hmm.
moment you put it, you don't know what option you actually
Hmm.
gave that for. So like that, it happened when I have to redo it because I want to make sure I did it right.
Hmm.
That is one. Secondly, most of the multi-choices questions, you will be able to choose. Let's say they're asking for three. I had maximum three to be selected, not
Hmm.
more than three. In
Hmm.
that three, out of six, you will be able to eliminate two for sure.
Hmm.
So out of four, you need to select three. That is when the confusion comes.
Hmm.
In the normal radio button questions, I was able to eliminate 100% all the questions, two answers. The main trick is going to come only between the two answers. What is going to be right? So, and then these are the question ones, around like three types of questions: your ready button questions, match the following, and multi-choice. I didn't get any hotspot or things like that. It's only these three types I got. And then the overall questions, first 60 questions,
Hmm.
that was a super tough, because that's the, I think the psychometric test they call.
Hmm.
That's what they're trying to see how well you perceive that first 60. After that, the 120 was breezy for me. The first
Hmm.
60, out of 230 minutes of the exam, you won't believe I spent 100 minutes.
Oh.
First 60 questions, I spent 100 minutes. And then I started saying, like, man, what am I going to do? I have only one, almost 130 is left. That's
Hmm.
it. And I have to complete 120 questions. I was like, okay, let me take a break for the 10 minutes, and then you can still complete it. But the first 60 questions, let me give you a details on the first 60. Um, Up to 15, close to 15, I was feeling confident that I was keeping a tab on the clock in the exam. I was like, okay, I'm doing it well. And then from 16 question, there are questions where I read 4 times, 5 times, because you just didn't get it because it's so tricky. And then I started spending more time because you kind of hit the panic mode. Oh my God, what is happening, right? So you kind of read through once again, and then you make sure you understand it well. And then I started marking few questions. And then when the moment you finish that 60, you have an option to take that break. When you whether you taking the break or not, that 60 questions are gone, so you cannot
Mm.
review it again. So
Yeah.
you have to make sure you are, before taking that break, all the 60 are verified. So I go and review it. The thing that PMA asks is, even if you're super confident for the first 60, right? Okay, I did review, I feel confident to move on. It asks another pop-up. Are you sure you really want to
Oh.
submit? It's like, oh, why are you asking this now? Let me go and do it again. So
Mm.
like that, I spent a little bit more time. It took about 100 minutes. But then after that first 60, the second 60 was easy. I exactly did in less than 60 minutes. The second
Mm.
60, I was able to complete less than 60 minutes. The third 60, I did it in less than 40 minutes. So I had
Mm.
20 minutes left in the third 60, which
Wow.
I felt really glad that, once upon a time I was feeling, oh my God, will I
Mm.
be able to complete? The last 60, I had 20 minutes where I was able to review all the questions two times properly. And last 60, I was confident that all 60 were correct, because most of the questions in the last 60 were like easily you can choose without even
Mm.
reading the full question.
Mm.
You just look at the last part of the question and you are able
Mm.
to choose what is correct. So I was feeling confident. But there are a few things that I would like to give tips, as people who are watching. When you read a question, you always look at what is being asked first. So they would
Mm.
have given a whole context or a scenario. So just read what you're being asked. What should the project manager do, or what is the right choice, or what is the best choice, what is the first choice? You read that, and then you read the context, and then read the answers from D to A, if it
Mm.
is, if you're reading. Because one thing I noticed is, the moment you read A, for example, and you feel confident that that's the right answer, you give less importance to B, C, D,
Mm.
because your mind always kind of gets clinged on that first
Sticks to
one.
that,
So
huh?
you can, yeah. So what I started doing in the mock was, I started doing reverse.
Mm.
D, C, B, A, and then I started doing elimination technique. For every question, I did elimination. That really helped. That is one tip. Second tip is, please understand the difference between prepcast and the real exam is. Prepcast, if you right click, that's a strikeout. Whereas in
Mm.
real exam, there is no right click.
Mm.
You have to select all the whole answer. There is a cursor on top. You have to go and say strikeout, so which is a time consuming. I wish Pearson we improves that, but that I find really difficult, because you cannot really right click and then strike out. So what I
Mm.
started doing was, because it was time consuming, I selected the first two or three letters and then I did a strikeout, so that I make sure I don't read it again. So
Mm.
like that, I did that. Third tip is, if you are not confident and if something that really bothering you, take a best guess and move on. Because
Mm.
the mistake that you would do is, one wrong answer, if you're not confident, will affect another 5 or 6 questions after that. So if you're not feeling super confident, it's okay. You're not going to get 100% in this exam. It's all psychometric test. So you just have to move on to the next question. Like what people say, one step at a time. Take one question at a time, period.
Mm.
And the moment you're going to be you're clicking that one question right, and that's going to be the winner here. And yeah, so last 60 I finished, and clicked on submit. I was feeling okay, confident, but I don't know how things are, right? Because you never know what's the right mark, and
Mm.
what's the right percentage for the pass. And then I got a message, congratulations. And after that, after a couple of minutes, the report came, and I saw above target. I was like, okay, fine, so I did good.
Great, great.
So,
So you mentioned mathematics questions there, and you also mentioned that you don't have to kind of calculate as such. Where all
right.
questions like these, you didn't have to use any,
Nah, no
calculations.
calculations.
What do they give for calculations, by the way? Can you carry paper, pen, physical
No.
calculator, embedded calculator?
And so I did an online proctor. So for
Hmm.
me, I did in the exact location as I'm speaking right now.
Hmm.
Because of, I keep hearing that you should not have a single piece of paper. Things should be
Hmm.
clean. My room was clean, as in I
Hmm.
didn't even have this one, so it's all removed.
Hmm.
So it was pretty straightforward. They just make sure you don't have anything here, and you
Hmm.
don't open your lips or murmur when you take the
Hmm.
exam. And that's
Hmm.
it, pretty much. As long as you do that, it'll be super easy. And you will have whiteboard. You will have this online calculator, but I never even opened the whiteboard,
Hmm.
because I keep hearing from people who did in the last year. They all had to, do a brain dump and open the whiteboard and the
Right.
calculator. I'm glad that I did in 2021, because I don't have to use any of those things. And
Hmm.
I wish it continues for this whole year for the rest of the folks as well.
Hmm.
And all the questions that they asked, even like numerical questions, so to speak, calculation of velocity, or making sure your project is under budget, over budget, your schedule
Mm.
is behind schedule, ahead of schedule. Those sort of questions. It's pretty
Okay.
straightforward when you know the basics, and I didn't have to use my calculator at all. It was I was very glad that I didn't have to use it.
Okay. Now I do understand that you had three types of questions. You had multiple answers questions, the radio button, our classical questions, and then you also had match the columns. Now I
Right.
am assuming that match the columns and these multiple answer questions were basically a bit more difficult than the usual radio button questions, right?
Hmm.
Because you
Hmm.
have multiple things going on there.
Right.
What percentage of these two type of questions that you see in the exam?
I would say about out of 180 questions, about 40 odd, I had
Mm.
this type of thing, like match the following and multi choices.
Mm-hmm.
Close to 140 questions is radio button.
Where the
I had
okay.
like, you know, 40 questions, I would
And
say.
then how would you rate the difficulty level of this exam, the new PMP?
See, that's a that's a great question. People do ask me every time I talk to other aspirants nowadays. Like for me, I didn't find it super difficult as long
Mm.
as you are able to manage the time, because
Mm.
um, it's not about the questions are tougher. It's
Mm.
about the questions are tricky.
Mm.
So what that means is the more mock you give, the better confidence you get and the better mindset you have to answer. So
Mm.
that's one key thing. Plus, if you are from agile background, it's going to be really really helpful for
Mm.
sure. But
Mm.
I know people who are from construction industries and automobile and things like that. Of course, they are finding it a little difficult. But I know few folks who are purely in the manufacturing background and construction background have got above target as well, which
Mm.
means it's not that tough for the folks to study.
Mm.
It's all about understanding the basics and doing mocks, and
Mm.
then make sure the mindset is clear. You cannot have a predictive mindset for a hybrid question,
Mm.
because I can give you an example, right? So there could be a question of something being asked in monitoring and control, okay, and then the context is going to touch upon four different knowledge areas. It's not one single knowledge area. They'll ask,
Mm.
the question will have something to touch upon in communication management, stakeholder management, your quality, and let's say risk. All of
Mm.
these will be combined, and they would say you have started with some planning, which means they'll talk about project charters, which means it is predictive, and then they also talk about doing iteration. So
Mm.
it's a hybrid. So now, first you need to know which process group are you in. Second, what are the knowledge areas that they're talking about, and
Mm.
whether am I in predictive, adaptive, or hybrid.
Right.
So until unless you are, by the time you get this for such questions, it's going to
Mm.
take time for you.
Yeah.
That's the only catch 22 situation there. I
Mm.
would say if you do enough preparation and with strong basics, people will be able to clear this easily based on what I have seen. But you have to have strong basics. The confusion comes when you are kind of blanked out. Hey, is this hybrid? Is this pure agile? Which one should I give
Mm.
preference to? There are
Mm.
questions which will be tricky. Which will be very tricky. Like, would you go and update issue log, or would you go and update risk register, or would you go and put that particular thing into the risk adjusted backlog? So, which is
Mm.
correct? It's a hybrid. So you need to look at the context, in what context the question is being asked, and if you were there, what would be the best choice to choose. I think in those cases, if you're strong in your basics, your best choice is going to be right. So don't have second thought on that. I never, even though I did a lot of review, I didn't change a single answer. Whatever I selected the first time, I just
Mm.
got stuck with it, because I know that I put my brain towards it when I selected. So that's how I did. And another tip for the folks who are not from agile background is, you can actually study the Scrum guide.
Mm.
That's going to be helpful, because it's only 15-20 pages. You can read that. And Mike Griffith's book, first chapter,
Mm.
that also going to give you a lot of input in
Mm.
terms of what is what, and what different types are going to be there. What's the difference between increment and iteration?
Mm.
What is the difference between extreme programming and Kanban? So,
Can
you have to know all these high level details, not in deep.
mm.
And people can use metaphors to remember things. What I
Mm.
mean by that is Mona Lisa painting. You have a video of Mona Lisa painting between, a difference between increment and iteration, right?
Mm.
The exact thing, when you remember, that's going to help you a lot in the exam. Just a simple example to give you is, If you want to know the three different roles in Scrum, right? You remember a dragon boat race. The
Mhm.
people who are sitting and paddling, they are the development team. The person who is drumming and then encouraging and motivating you is nothing but a Scrum master. The owner of the boat is a product owner, so he
Mhm.
knows which boat should come first, which boat should come second. So if
Wow.
you use these metaphors, it's
Mhm.
going to really help you in the exam. And also you can even use that for predictive as well. There are areas where you can actually pick and choose some live examples of your work and then apply those into the terms, and that will help you to remember the exam. I did a lot of those metaphors. And also when in a study group mode, uh, the more questions you answer, the better you get in your basics. So I kind of I participated in a lot of forums where I kind of answered a lot of questions. So that also helped me to reinforce the knowledge, to make sure that a lot of people get benefit out of that.
Excellent, excellent tips, tricks, and strategies there, Mani. Thank you so much for taking your time out. Really appreciate it. And Mani's LinkedIn profile will be linked in the description for those who want to kind of reach out to him and get some more tips if you want to, or you can reach out to us, of course. Thank you so much again, Mani. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sharif. Keep up the good work. Thank you.